What's going on, guys? This is RBG, aka the Random Black Gamer, bringing you a video on a Transformers game. This came about when I was checking out another fellow YouTuber by the name of the Fire Brothers, who brought it to my attention that a fan is actually doing a remake to the 2007 Transformers the movie game, which funny enough is the highest selling Transformers game of all time. And I already know what a lot of you guys are thinking. How could that be? It was nothing more than a video game that was created for all intents and purposes to cash in on the hype of the upcoming 2007 movie. And I'm just gonna respond with this. Yes, that's exactly why it made so much money, because it was a movie tie-in title. But there are other variables that led to its success, such as the timing. Like, you have to keep in mind that the Transformers brand was in a rough spot in the early 2000s. It wasn't prevailing like it did in the late 80s, early 90s. Its popularity was actually on the decline. I also want to point out that the last time we even had a console Transformers game at that time was in 2004, but it was connected to a less popular series in the form of Transformers Armada, which was also a part of the Unicron trilogy. But that particular run of the Transformers didn't necessarily do anything to elevate the brand. The fan base had gotten older, and nostalgia could no longer sustain what Hasbro had brought to the table with the robots in disguise. But after the Transformers hit the silver screen in 2007, that would all change, because the movies dramatically revitalized the brand by transforming it from a nostalgic 1980s toy line into a global multi-billion-dollar franchise. Like, no joke, the first movie made over $700 million and drove massive sustained interest in Hasbro action figures, cementing its position as a top-tier toy brand, which would eventually give birth to the Studio Series action figures, which were higher in detail and quality. But above all else, the film would serve as key marketing content for Hasbro's licensing comics and merchandise, particularly with the video games, which led to Transformers the movie game, which is a title that hasn't necessarily aged the best, but one of the things that I really enjoy about this title to this day would be the visuals, because it does properly represent what we saw in the Bay movies, which was this very gravitas in-your-face experience. And I just want to go ahead and circle back around to why this game was so successful, and it's not only the fact that it was coming fresh off of the heels of the first live action movie, it was also the fact that this game was being released at the end of a console cycle that was leading us into the next generation of consoles, that being the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Although it had almost been a year since the PlayStation 3 had launched, many fans couldn't afford it, so they had to settle with its predecessor, that being the PlayStation 2, which is one of the highest selling consoles of all time, and it's the platform that sold the most copies of Transformers the game, selling 1.29 million units, with the Nintendo DS version coming in close with 1.24 million units. Fast forward almost 20 years later, and we're getting a remake from dedicated fans, one of which who goes by the name of Alternary. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I am very surprised that Alternary didn't hit your boy up to talk about this sooner, because this news has been circulating on YouTube for a while now, but for whatever reason I'm just finding out about this. Because like I said earlier, I had recently watched a video from the Fire Brothers on this thing, and if you guys want to, I'll provide the original link to their video on it, because they do go into great depth, but I'm going to be doing my own thing. I'm going to be giving you guys my general thoughts on this, as well as letting you know what you can expect, which is a graphical overhaul using the Unreal Engine 5, which for the longest time was a graphics engine that had a pretty rough start because the plugins were very difficult to master. Like, when I used to hear that a game was being developed using UE5, I would roll my eyes, because I knew that that project was going to come with a multitude of issues. But things have gotten a lot better and easier in that regard, not to mention that the project lead designer has already said that they have been taking a lot of times to understand the ins and outs of UE5, and we can expect this thing to be very polished upon arrival. And as you can see, they've already begun working on some of the models, such as this version of Bumblebee, which looks like he's using his first vehicle form, which is that beat up 1977 Z28 Camaro. Although this model is unfinished, you can see some of the details, such as the weathered paint job and the rust going along the headlights, which was something that was already visible in the original version. But unlike that version, the polygons are a lot more refined this time around. Everything doesn't look too angular, and the proportions mirror their cinematic counterparts. That was always my biggest gripe about the original game, especially the PlayStation 3 and 360 versions. The body proportions looked a little off, but that's just my opinion. Anyways, something else that the lead developer has talked about is the fact that he's actually going to be remaking the cinematics, particularly the secondary ones, which I always had a problem with because they didn't necessarily match the quality of the opening intros as well as the ending cinematics that were so good they looked like they could have been animated by Industrial Light and Magic, even though they weren't. Yeah, I was kind of expecting that quality all the way through, but that quality dips once you get into those secondary animations that look like they were made from action figures. They also have this very cartoony movement to them that's very fast and frenetic, and you don't get enough time to process it. Like, you'll see a character like Bumblebee whack Barricade and take off in his alt mode. So I'm hoping that the developers of this remake actually animate them a lot better and make them consistent with those realistic live action type of cutscenes. But moving on, we gotta talk about the revised campaign. As you guys are aware, the original game featured two story campaigns, that being the Autobots as well as the Decepticons. And the story structure is kind of similar to what we got in the movie, where we play with the first Autobot we see, that being Bumblebee. Except in this moment it kind of plays like a prequel to the movie because we see him land on Earth and assume his vehicle mode, that being the Camaro, to disguise himself from the humans. The same can be said for Blackout, where we see him scan his vehicle mode and we see how he eventually gets to the military base. Although I did enjoy both separate campaigns, I hated how they didn't intercept or have implications based on what side did what to the other. Kind of like how we got in the War for Cybertron games, where you had those two particular sides, but you could tell what the other was up to and it would impact the other side in some kind of way. Kind of like Megatron corrupting Cybertron's core and Optimus Prime and the rest of the Autobots being tasked with purging the core. Things like that would have added for more replayability for both campaigns. But this time around for the remake, they're not going to be doing two separate campaigns. It's going to be one single campaign, where depending on the scenario and the character, you can actually follow their perspectives. So if a character like Optimus Prime is taking care of something regarding Megatron, you can actually play it like that, and you can see it from Megatron's perspective. Same can be said for Barricade. If you see something going on with Bumblebee, you can approach him and do things, but the characters have to be alive during these moments. And I don't know about you guys, but this has me very hyped. Like, I really want to experience what they're cooking with this, because this is something that's really going to make this feel familiar yet different. Like, if you can improve upon the original, then why not? But anyways, the roster is going to consist of the same one that we got in the original build of the game, which is Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Jazz, Ratchet, and Ironhide. And for the Decepticons, you get a chance to play with Megatron, Starscream, Blackout, Barricade, and Brawl. But this time around, they're bringing something new to the table, and that's the addition of the Rookie, which was exclusive to the Nintendo DS version of the game. If you guys aren't aware, the Rookie was essentially this Create-A-Bot character that you can kind of customize to your liking, and he would serve as the audience surrogate that could interact with the main characters depending on the faction you're in. For example, when you're playing on the Autobot side, you're a noble warrior who doesn't mind sacrificing himself for a greater cause, like the Rookie does when he gets the Allspark away from Megatron and proceeds to put it in his own chest. And before he dies, he tells Optimus to make Earth the Autobots' new home, as opposed to the Decepticon side of things, where we have the Rookie that serves as Starscream's protege and eventually tries to kill his mentor with the Allspark. Apparently, the Rookie is going to serve as the game's anchor point, and he'll feature major choice-driven missions that will have implications on the world. Speaking of implications, I gotta talk about this whole open world map, because apparently this game is going to function similarly to that of GTA 5, where you can switch to other characters when the story demands it, particularly when they have character-specific missions. They can also be used during free roam and for side activities. But it doesn't just stop there, because if you guys remember in Grand Theft Auto, depending on your actions, if you were a bad boy doing bad things out in the environment, you were going to be punished by the police officers, and the perception on you would change based on these actions. That's a similar thing that this game has going, because apparently it's going to have a morality system where depending on your actions, things could change. Like, for example, if you're playing with a Decepticon such as Blackout and you end up destroying a military base, the human presence can drop in that region, as well as the Autobots' reinforcements, but they will, however, increase in other areas. And I'm not gonna lie, this is something that I always wanted in the original game, especially for the Autobots. Like, it always felt funny that I could throw a civilian that's in a car and get away with it. But this time around, the game game will actually be keeping track of civilian casualties and infrastructure damage. It'll also impact later missions, like if you weaken the Decepticon presence in the city, it will give Jazz a easier time in his own Autobot mission. And it seems like there's even a chance that you will be able to change his inevitable fate of dying. So yeah, you know, things like that, that's going to add for more replayability to this campaign. This project is proving to be a very ambitious one, and it seems like we have some very dedicated fans working on it. Like, I haven't been excited about a remake since Metal Gear Solid Delta, so yeah. Hopefully this right here lives up to the hype and these developers take their time with it, which I do believe they are because it's still early in its development phase. But you guys already know how I like to do. I will keep you updated on any news or details that I have with it. I'm also going to be reaching out to the lead game developer, that being Alternary, if he actually has any more details that he would like to provide. But until then, what do you guys think about this? Were you a fan of the movie tie-in game? And what do you think he could add to it that can make it a lot better? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, I ask that you like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. But if you really enjoyed this video, it would help me out tremendously if you shared it with all your friends and followers on all the different social media outlets. Sharing really makes a difference. But this is your boy RBG signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.